Good day, folks.
Hello.
It's been a couple of weeks since we got up this early. Well, got up this time. I will leave it to locality. Bracken, thanks for posting the ICR stuff. That teased a lot of good conversation.
Yeah, the leads are gonna be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of what. Yeah, I'm curious what you all think because I'll give a couple more minutes for folks to join. I think it just goes back to the question of what exactly is a spec and what do we want from it. Some reason I have a chant now of going down the street. What is a spec and what do we want from it now? And I saw Zot posted as well, so that's cool. All right, do we want to do the 3 minutes after or the 5 minutes after? Haley, you're in California, right?
No, I'm in Oregon.
Oregon. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's still West Coast time.
Mm.
So I see the morning sun coming through.
Yeah. It's not so bad. We're actually cloudy today like normal. Sometimes it can be a little painful in the morning to have meetings like this.
We were down hiking in Oregon and down on Cannon Beach and even further south for 4th of July weekend. It's just so gorgeous down there.
Oh yeah. It's fun in Oregon because if it's summer, you go to the beach to cool off.
That is definitely true. Water is definitely cold there. Okay. While we kick this party started. So I think, yeah, basically the Buildex question, and I don't know, maybe we want to just invert the conversation or just intertwine the two items from Buildex to the manifest lists. It's interesting. So kind of what I was teeing off, and I'll tee it off, and I'd really like for the broader group here that implements. It's not just implementing distribution; it's distribution, right? It's also as registry operators and projects, what is it that you're looking for the spec to provide? So here's my interpretation, at least the way I've been trying to go about it from the efforts that I've been trying to do. Certainly Azure competes, right? Like we all trying to carve out some set of market. And I'll just say for me, it's, for us as the team as a whole, but it's hard to compete without some set of stability where things just work. The other thing to just keep in mind, and just as a background, I've worked in a couple of different industries, and I used to work in the broadcast engineering industry where those TV trucks, the trucks that show up at sporting events and other entertainment events that have the whole control room in them. I used to run one of those facilities, and it's interesting to have different jobs because at one point I was offered a job to run the satellite uplink. And a satellite uplink is kind of like power. Nobody thanks them for doing a great job at the end of the show. It's just supposed to work. They get yelled at when something goes wrong. And just a weird story, we were doing Clinton was being elected in Atlanta, and we're parked behind the Atlanta, was it Atlanta or New Orleans? I think it was Atlanta. And all of a sudden, this is pre 9/11, pre all things where bombings were going on. We're sitting in the truck, and all of a sudden we hear major explosions. Like, what the hell's going on? And so we just opened the door and looked out, and they were setting off fireworks. And the fireworks are like awesome to watch. And then all of a sudden we have cardboard debris landing on us in big chunks. And it landed in the satellite uplink. And the production people are yelling at them, like, what do you want us to do? We're a big cup catching stuff. So there's like this, it's a thankless job to run an uplink, right? And then I kind of view running a registry is in many ways very similar to that utility. Nobody thanks the electricity company for making sure electricity gets to your house. It's just expected. And the same thing with registries or storage or networking. There's just a set of core primitives that cloud providers and products provide that customers like, they love it, but it's like, yeah, it's supposed to do that. So I don't really see registries and our cloud providers don't see them as really like the competitive differentiators. They're platform capabilities that get people on Azure, that don't block them, so that they can do the things they're trying to do with Kubernetes services or ML and all the others. So the more we can provide that stability, and the stability is across all of the registries, the more the whole platform elevates. So that's kind of just my perspective on how I'm trying to do this. So there's a couple of things that we do in Azure in the ACR team that are unique to Azure. Like the whole Project Teleport stuff takes advantages of things that only we could do inside of Azure. And there's no customer changes. It just makes the thing faster. But all of this other stuff around delete APIs or artifacts so we can leverage other things to store in a registry, those are all things that are only viable if they're standard and work across, because Helm wasn't willing to accept these changes unless it worked across all registries. WASM, CNAB, RegOps, which I always call GitOps, which I always call RegOps. I've already started inverting it. Those kind of projects will only work if they work across, not just the majority, like all. If you look at the list that Jal put together, the artifacts works on literally every registry you could find, and that except for Quay, which was strange because I know Joey was getting this set up at first, Quay and Docker Hub, and they both committed to it. The Docker Hub reason is somewhat tied up into this conversation related to BuildX, is like they built it specific to container images. I'm already doing a tangent on that. So before I do that, so anyway, just the more that we can do, the effort that I'm trying to contribute to is the more standards, the more that works across all of these things, then the community can start building better tools for things like, what does it mean to have a registry CLI? Today, you can pretty much push and pull to any registry. You can use basic auth, and the auth is a whole challenge of its own to try to standardize. But you can't delete consistently across all registries. You can't get repo listings because we deleted the catalog API because it wasn't designed in a way that can be implemented across. Tags listing is pretty broken if you have more tags that can fit in a single JSON payload. There's no paging API. So that's kind of what I've been trying to do, is not try to find nuances to read into this spec that obviously not all registries implement, which is what we're seeing with BuildX, and not to exclude anybody from doing creative things, but to define some standards so that people can build tools and experiences that work across all the registries. And if it doesn't work, on GitLab, then that's Haley's decision to decide to, make it work or not. Right? That's, or, their company. I'm picking on Haley here. So it's really, that's, kind of like what we saw. It's clear now that Docker and Quay are the only ones that are outstanding in this long list of registries that support one generalized approach. And then the market will create pressure on them for them to evolve or not. So anyway, that's my little rant. And I'm just curious how you folks think about that. Am I pushing on the right things? Should I push on something else? Should we, what somebody else want to push on something that we want to standardize? So for there, I'll just be quiet and listen.
One of the things that that I think is important is having a sense of predictability. And there's this, you know, if it does go on the side of like, well, sometimes you will get blobs in this manifest array on the manifest list object. That's pretty surprising. We were surprised, and you know, Zhao and I are not maybe like the second coming of Donald Knuth or Dijkstra or something like that, but we're good programmers and we're familiar with the Docker ecosystem more than most. And so if this is something that can surprise us, I think somebody who is under deadline pressure, who's not as familiar with Docker, who just wants to get something working is really unlikely to be able to address this sort of situation. It's not what you would expect to happen. So I think for people who are trying to write clients, it's also important to have, you know, uh, it's the principle of least surprise is what it gets called, right? You know, you don't want to be like, oh, well, I thought a manifest was like this, not a JSON, not a tarball, right? So I think that's important just for the ecosystem in a more broad way. And also, if we do need to do inspection on media type and like really look at like, okay, I know this media type, I know this, and I know like the media types I expect to be contained within a manifest of this media type, then stuff like BuildX and Helm charts, they stop working because, or they work, you know, right now you can push up a manifest which topographically looks right, you know, like a Helm chart's not a container image, but it sure looks like one. You know, so it makes experimenting quite a bit more difficult because things will not work automatically if you, as long as you, so I think defining a set of constraints around what we can expect from a manifest list, a manifest, an OCI artifact, people can work within those constraints and actually have more flexibility in practice. So I think those are the two things for me.
Those are great.
Yeah, my own concern is just how do people that want to do things like what BuildX wants to do, what is the path for them going forward? What's the proper approach for them that follows within the spec? And so I'm looking at some of the open issues. I dropped a few links in the notes for things like John had a proposal out there to make a descriptor of first class manifest. And so it's a real simple manifest. It just points to any random descriptor and that's all it points to. So there might be other options to create something in here that would not be too complex, that would support these use cases and create that environment where we're not breaking things.
I that's the first I've seen of this other one, so I'll have to go look at it from my own perspective.
Yeah, it's not a very long proposal. It's very short. It just says, here's the manifest. It's got a type that is, I'm a pointer to a descriptor. It's got a descriptor, points whatever. One blob, that's it.
Yeah, I guess there's two conversations around what to do with the BuildX, and that's what is the end state? Like, what do we think is the most, what do we think it should end up like? And do we need an intermediate step? And if so, what does that look like? So I think that's the conversation around BuildX. So if we're talking about an intermediate state, I would be wanting to do something that doesn't involve making, like, you know, something like putting it in a Schema 2 image or an OCI image rather than image index to kind of use the same components we have now rather than creating something new and different.
Yeah, my hesitation on, for right now, saying let's let's go to an intermediate state, is that there already are people that have these images out there. I feel like we're at that intermediate state already. We've already created the mess that we've got right now. And so I'm looking more toward the final end goal, and then what steps do we need to do to get there?
Yeah, I kind of think, and I'm trying to create a void for others. Like Bracken, what do you think?
I think it's more on the pragmatic side. Obviously, my opinions are formed on running a cloud scale registry like the Azure folks would be. We don't have any BuildX users trying to push caches at the moment. If we did, we would have to probably fix something for them. So I think I'm most keen to get it working in some way. I did see that Zhao's second issue to move BuildX to using an OCI manifest does appear to have gained traction. So Justin and Derek both seem keen to actually do that now. So I think
Team opposed or agreed? Sorry.
agreed. I think it looks a lot like BuildX will move to using a OCI manifest in the near to mid-term sort of thing. There isn't an outlook on when that would happen, but it looks like it will. So I think going forward, we'll be able to switch off the that overzealous descriptor status, which is sort of where I want to get to. I still think personally that the spec pretty much does forbid it. It doesn't forbid it explicitly. Joining the OCI call last week, the OCI maintainers seem to have a consensus that the spec is ambiguous.
Yeah, I think
I don't think we had any maintainers on that call though.
Huh?
I don't think we had any maintainers on last week's call.
Zhao, I think, was there. He's not here today in this meeting, but I think he was there.
Yeah, Joe, is it John is a maintainer on OCI spec as well. He was in that call.
Yeah, there's a mishmash of TOB and individual project maintainers, and there's been some threads on the side. There's lots of different discussions that happen there. But this is why I'm kind of looking for your input as people that run registries at Mass, because not all people on the call do, or their jobs have just changed over time. So there's kind of a bit of history versus current, and so there's a mixture of both in there that help. And anyway,
not having a problem as well, we're keen to keep down the path of least surprise as well, because we wrote our own GC implementation, and that's what this surprised us.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just for complete transparency, the fact that ACR even works is it was a support issue that came through, and because we have this ACR tasks build environment, which we specifically enabled BuildX, it was basically treated as a bug as opposed to whether we should have actually enabled it. So because we were just GCing the blobs because they weren't in anything that we would recognize, and I still don't agree that it should be there. It clearly says manifests. So, but I digress a bit. I think the question I kind of have for you folks is kind of like two questions. There's the approach that I've been trying to take with artifacts is to basically generalize the registries, basically just make them these dumb storage buckets that have just enough knowledge. And when I say dumb, it's like the smarter they are, the harder they are to scale, right? For every logic that has to process, it just, we all have seen, everybody on this call has had registries scaling in one sense or another. I mean, even with Harbor, I know their individual instances can scale pretty large too, but they have a scaling across how many different instances of a copy of their code base. The cloud registries, at least we have control of, we know what code is running, and we can do updates and so forth. We're starting to support on-prem registries, which is going to be interesting, where how do we know the customer will upgrade? So the point is there's a complexity there, just volume or the number of instances. So when code changes, how do you upgrade them all or keep them all in sync? So the approach that I've been trying to take with the artifact stuff is basically treat it as a higher level storage API that doesn't really know what it is it's storing. It shouldn't care. If you think of file system APIs, it doesn't know it's a Word doc, a Golang file, a binary, or a picture. It just says, here's a standard API for storing stuff. and all of these other technologies. And, you know, Brandon can make up a new foo thing and he can save it with the .brandon extension if he wants. And, you know, the file system goes, okay. And if you want to give it an icon to be the .brandon extension, there's an API for that too. But again, the file system doesn't just doesn't know or care. It scales at infinitum. So that's what the approach I've been trying to do with the artifact stuff with registries is let it store all these different things, but give it a way to say what it is without the registry having to do anything. I have another PR that does a localized mapping of media types, so you can do icons, but I don't want to digress too far in that. And then, so for all of these, the majority of things that we've come across, they do just fit in the image manifest. So Helm has worked, you know, WASM, all these others. Is every day I find out new ones that people have created that I don't even know about. CNAB has always been one that didn't really work because of its higher level collections. And that as we've been doing the secure supply chain stuff recently, we've needed the ability to add the relationships between different artifacts. So what I was trying to do is have all existing types just work with you know, the current infrastructure that we've all implemented. We had various registries had to open up their validation to Haley, your point of, you know, the media types. Like, yes, there's an existing manifest, but the media type for config, people were validating, or the media type for layers. And I see it, Brendan. So all we had to do was just relax those limits, which the spec did not dictate they had to be hardened. And that type worked, but then we just needed a way to figure out what it is. And we had this agreement, the manifest.config.media type would give you that pivot. So the idea was, if we have that generalization and that works for the majority of things, what is missing? And the ability to add references was the next one, and then GC and others. So I'll pause there because I see Brandon get your hand raised.
Yeah, and I've only got a few minutes before I got to run to the next call anyway. So I want to throw out there is the challenge that we're facing. Is it mostly focused on garbage collection, and as Steve likes to say, life cycle management? Is that the big issue we're facing on the registry side? Because from my side, I see this from the client side, and it's going to cause all kinds of pain in the neck. I pull something back and I put in the wrong object if I don't parse the media type in advance. And so I've got to do some extra parsing there. And so, yeah, it is some extra work to support something random in that index field. But I feel like from the
random in, sorry, which field? The manifest field?
Yeah, if you're putting something, if you put a blob in the manifest, I'm going back to the original issue here. And so if you put a blob in that index field, I see that breaking client side stuff for me. You know, if I try to parse it and do it wrong. From the registry side, is it just the garbage collection code? Is that kind of where we're focusing, or are there other places? I see Haley shaking your head.
Yeah, there's some weird stuff that'll happen. So if you pull one of these, if you try to pull Docker pull one of these cache images, it'll, you know, it runs to the end and can't find anything. Anything extra, you know, like you get a manifest list and you're like, give me its references. Anytime the registry distribution would have to do that, it would need to have, when we do need to go back and add this, like we need to add code that says, is this a blob? Is this a manifest?
But is that all client side code?
Well, no, like this is registry code because there's some compat for clients that don't support manifest lists. So to, you know, if you pull a manifest list, you have to rewrite it into a Linux AMD64 if we can find it. So
yeah, so that is an extra issue there. The reason I was going down that thread was thinking that, you know, if we only had the one place we had to fix that on, it might make sense to get the registry maintainers more involved in defining what lifecycle management, garbage collection, stuff like that looks like for registries, just because I think in this group here, there's probably, you know, enough people that have done it 6 different ways. And so it'd be nice to get some standardization on that, not just to make your lives easier, but to also make it more predictable for people that are using registries to know this is when to expect these things to be deleted.
I think for validation,
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, for validation and push, there's also a little bit of a thing, you know, like with the distribution right now, we sort of accidentally validate it. But that's another thing, just because I think that's part of part of the issue with garbage collection is that in the validation step, that should be what it catches, be like, we don't understand what's going on here. And that slipped through because of that is the workaround for the issue. You know, it's I don't have it on hand, but you know, that validation step wasn't able to actually complete properly. So I think in the validation step on push for manifest, that's when the registry should be able to say, like, I don't know what to do with this. And that should happen before garbage collection. So I think that's kind of how that relates. The API and the garbage collection are connected.
Part of what I was trying to do with that was a distribution discussion was just capture some of the different ones. So, hey, I don't know if you've seen that one, but I'd love to get, I'll paste it in here or just send it to you. Basically, they're on open container / distribution, there's a discussion for capturing what the different registries do in for the lifecycle management, not just GC. I'll paste it here, but I'll also put it in the hack doc. So we're just trying to capture an inventory that's not really meant to debate or argue one way or the other. It's like, how have we all implemented it? Yeah, well, it's not, that wasn't my intent.
No, it's been our main focus here. So we could write about this.
And it's not meant to like give up any super secrets, like most stuff is in our docs. And the idea is what are the various people doing so that we can figure out how do we evolve the registries to move forward to support various types. And just to build on, you know, that what works today, it's great. What doesn't work today. So what do we have to add in a standard way so that there would be, from a customer's perspective, users and customers' perspective, a consistent behavior. If they use the Helm CLI, can they push to each registry? If they start doing signatures or want to start pushing SBOMs, will that work consistently across our registries? What capabilities don't exist today that we would add, and how would we add them in a way that we could implement them with changes? Like there's nothing, I'm not suggesting there's any free ride for new capabilities, especially when we start talking about adding references and the lifecycle management around that. If you delete the parent, does the children go? Did you delete the children? Can you delete the children when the parents are still there? And parents and children don't work in this example, but I think you get the idea. So if we can capture what people are doing today, that helps us inform. If we can have some standards on what exists today, then and formalize and fill the gaps on Docker and Quay, then awesome. We have, and whoever else is in there, if we want to add a suite, that'd be great to do. And if we can start capturing what's missing, the approach that I've been trying to take with the new artifact manifest is there is a more generic way to do things. It would mean that registries would have to know how to parse this new manifest type. But in our experience in the way we've implemented ACR, the challenge isn't parsing a JSON document. In fact, by making a new JSON document, it lets us know this is a new thing and it should be treated differently, as opposed to it slipping through the existing APIs and customers thinking it's going to work and it doesn't because things get GC'd. This is what happened with BuildX. So registries will opt into supporting this behavior, and it'll work as kind of as expected. See there, Brendan. So the question is, if we create a newer manifest that registries opt in, know how to parse, what would need to be in it so that it's not just notary, it's not just SBOMs, it's a whole new range of things that don't have the constraints that the image manifest has today. So if you look at the artifact manifest today, there actually is no config at all. I kind of just said the config is just a blob. So if you need a config, stick it in the blobs collection and make it a media type that's a config. Clients can pull it. Then everything's just a blob from this higher level list. But there's also a subject manifest so that you can say this thing is an extension of this other thing. And the blobs collection, by the way, is also optional. So if all you want to push is a set of additional annotations, you can do that. So now I can get the original net monitor image, I can push some additional annotations, and now I can get the original net monitor image, some annotations, an SBOM, and the original digest don't change. The Nidus folks were able to just use this for like pushing expanded layer types. Some of the encrypted folks are using this for what is the encryption? There's an acronym they use for the new encryption model that folks have been doing. So what I'm trying to do is figure out what gaps, and let's create. If we just define yet one more manifest that registries opt in to support, there's not just one new type, but a whole new suite of types that can be supported. And the container image format can either continue down its path using exactly what it's doing, or I'm hoping that the manifest would support them if they wanted it to, but it's kind of an opt-in. But the idea is this new manifest is not tied to any one type of artifact. It's just this generic one. So just, do people like that idea? Is that a good idea? So that, to your point, Haley, you would have an expectation of you don't need to know the details, but you know what is the structure of the thing that's coming in. So, because all you really need to know is what are the blobs, how do they relate, what is the thing that's considered the life cycle, and to the point of ref counting. And then if it's a Helm chart, who cares if it's in the thing? If there's a way to say, hey, media types or artifact types where a Helm chart maps to this icon and localized strings, even better. So be quiet. Bracken, I saw your hand raised.
Yeah, I think there's nothing I like more than being able to tell our customers that we support a bunch of new clients because we've done nothing more than upgrade our distribution version. I do understand the desire for client writers to be able to treat the registry as a dumb object store, although that's probably desirable because that lets you forget about lifecycle management, and you're only forgetting about it by passing it on to the registry operators. So obviously implementing or understanding every new manifest or every new complex interaction that comes along and how to not GC that by accident is untenable for us because we don't have the bandwidth to do a lot more than upgrading our distribution version and remaining compliant with all this audit stuff that's going on. So the artifact spec is just golden ticket for us. That's one new manifest comes along, we understand how to lifecycle manage that properly. It works at our scale. We don't end up in multiple petabytes worth of storage being used. It seems like the obvious choice to us, I think.
Yeah, I like the idea. How do I unraise my hand? I'm normally just very rude. Okay, there we go. So I think the issue, I love the idea of the registry being stupid and having, we're just a hole that you put stuff into and you can get stuff out of the hole and we don't have to know about it. I love the idea. I think this puts a burden on clients. They have to take on the validation work that we stopped doing. And what the registry doing is the validation that it does, it sort of sets a baseline for, a schema 2 manifest or what have you, such that, you can push up with Docker client and then maybe you pull down with Kubernetes, which is different. So if we do sort of give up the validation that we do, the only thing the thing I worry about is like interop between different clients. Are they going to understand, especially with deliberately ambiguous specs? Are they going to have the same concept of this is an OCI image index, this is a schema 2 manifest? So there's no sync that's done by the registry in that case. So I think they need to be included in that conversation, like the big players for the clients need to be included, I think.
I figure I should follow a practice for raising my hand too. So if anybody else wants to jump in, I think that's the easiest way to step on each other. So the client question has been an interesting one as it comes up. So if you think about the registry just trying to have this way of being a dumb storage bucket that knows about a certain set of things, and we are talking about adding one more thing. It's not the last thing. Like it is one more thing today, and as we learn, we may add new capabilities that aren't supported. But the idea is that the registry opts in, so there's no guessing on its side what the expected behavior. On the client, we're trying to have a standard set of APIs as well. And so we just donated ORAS to CNCF under Sandbox. So we've been trying to use ORAS as this client library for OCI registry as storage so that you can interact with the registry in a generic way. Because to me, I find it interesting that people are trying to use the Docker client to pull things that are not container images. Like I don't use the Word API to open a file to pull in movies, right? Like there's an underlying file system API, which Word and media players and other APIs implement. But we don't really expect one to try to do the other's purpose. Now there are generic file clients, right? Obviously Xcopy and some of the other ones that are there. They know how to work with the way to interact with files in a generic way. And I'm curious what Brandon was referring to, so I'll follow up with them separately. So to me, having Docker be able to pull things, to me, it feels kind of broken. Like if it's not just that Docker pull, is it because you can't Docker run a BuildX. It is, clearly a different thing. But we do need an API that does do that. So that's what we're trying to incubate with ORAS. And if you look, I pasted the link to, we actually have a fork of distribution that supports reference types. And we have a fork of ORAS that supports reference types as well. And that was the video that I shared a while ago. So when I think of what is break, like the container image chain of tools, until it knows how to deal with a signature, like I don't want it to open up a notary signature because it doesn't know what to do with it. And if it tries to pull a signature directly, it tries to run a signature in a Kubernetes cluster, then it should fail. Like where it fails, I don't know, but there's nothing to run. It doesn't know what to do with it. No, a Kubernetes cluster should be able to validate a signature, but that's new behavior. And that's behavior that the notary group will create with OPA and some other tooling. But we're trying to be very explicit where the capabilities are kind of opt-in where they're needed, and they don't slip through and have very strange expectations. So if we have a generic API, we're focusing on ORAS, to be able to do that. Then you can build anything on top of it that can do the specific thing, like Helm uses ORAS, WASM uses ORAS. It doesn't have to be ORAS, it could be other things. That's where we're trying to put our focus into it. And now every specific tool knows how to interact with its specific types. If the WASM client gets a Helm chart, it should say, I don't know what to do with this thing. And then the generic APIs that want to do copying of content between registries, let's say, knows how to work with a generic set, one or two or three, manifest. Three being, we have two manifests today. We actually have four because we have the Docker manifest as well. We tend to want to forget those, which is the majority of manifests in our registries. I'm still seeing. Curious what you guys see. How many people are actually using the new OCI manifests that are not Helm and WASM? Like, how many container images do you get that are actually using OCI?
For image indexes, quite a bit, as it turns
really?
out. Yeah, as it turns out.
Cool. Oh, that's awesome. I have to actually go back and look at our telemetry.
We see very few OCI manifests, and that's largely because most of our customers are running in our Kubernetes service, and most of them still build their images using the Docker command.
Yeah, we're seeing OCI image indexes from BuildKit that is just not nothing.
But the larger, to Bracken's point, the larger set of container images that get stored in our registries, or how many of those have switched off of the Docker manifest versus some of the OCI manifest yet? Until the Docker toolchain switches for builds, or there's others that become more widely adopted, which I actually think will happen over the next couple of years. So I think that transition will happen. Anyway, so the point is that if we have general clients, like this fictitious reg client that I call it, they call it OCI reg client or just reg client, it should be able to copy this graph from registry 1 to registry 2. It shouldn't care that the notary signatures are SBOMs It just says, here's a graph of reference types. The user is said do the default behavior, and default behavior knows how to copy that graph. So the idea is I could copy the net monitor image with its signatures, with its SBOM, with its security scan results, and it would go from registry 1 to registry 2, or repo 1 to repo 2. So that's been the thought process we've been kind of innovating on, and I just kind of gut check that with you. Bracken?
So I wonder, when we're talking about bringing the registry down to a more just permissive bucket for storage, what differentiates a registry at that point from S3? Because there's nothing to have stopped Docker 10 years ago from putting a bunch of tarballs in an S3 bucket and putting a JSON blob in an S3 bucket and saying that's your registry. I suppose thinking about it in this call, the two things I can think of is it does low-cost dedupe of blobs up front without having to do any walking of any object stores. And that if you continue pushing latest on top of the manifest forever and ever and ever and ever, 10 years down the line, when you've got a petabyte of images, it's easy to clean them up. So I think distribution's value over an object store is efficient storage by dedupe, quite in a cost-effective way, and lifecycle management becomes possible because of the API that distribution that registries have adopted.
I've got a view, but I wanted to, again, leave space for others to, because I've had this exact conversation. So when I'm already doing it, when Azure was first considering building a registry, that exact question was asked, like, why do we need to build a registry? Why can't we just do some low-level blob API? Because, you know, this is like several years ago when Docker was still a fad. And we kind of like, there's an interesting story of Azure and DevDiv, which is where registry was actually built from in DevDiv. And the thought process is it is more. And this is what we love about registries today, is that it can store more than one blob. It could be a collection of blobs. It could be a graph of blobs. It could be deduped. You can put what we call annotations tape, metadata, that around it that says this collection of stuff represents a thing, an artifact. And you can think about it that way. You know, with our georeplication features, I can replicate these things and know when the thing gets there intact, that there's an event that says, yep, it's arrived. You're right, at underlying, many cloud providers implement, you know, it as an S3 API. ACR we don't, but it's, you know, it's still a blob. But it's this higher level concept that makes up a registry content to represent that collection of things that can be several blobs streamed down to the client in parallel. And while not all artifact types need multiple blobs, Helm does now support 2 layers. Nidus supports several. There's a bunch. The fact that they can is what makes it, you know, so valuable. Anyway.
Yeah, I think just integrity checking, just like, does this hash out the same way? You know, did this blob make it over? That kind of stuff is very valuable. I mean, it is, like Steve mentioned before, that's the power company. Like, obviously it should work. I don't want to think about it, but if it doesn't work, then it's unacceptable. And just sort of like, you know, there's a lot of great, you know, like YouTube, like, why don't you just upload a video to your FTP server? You know, there's a lot of thin layers over storage that are quite successful.
The YouTube's a great example. I mean, it's just uploaded as a blob, right? So what's the big deal? How do I get rid of that once I do that? Okay. Does it just time out? Is that the way those icons work? We'll see. All right, I won't press it. I'm just there. It did time out. But YouTube's got a set of metadata around it, right? It's got the ability to have discussions. You know, granted, I'm not sure we're ready to have discussions to registries, but the idea that you can, you know, in fact, there's another proposal I have out there that I've started incubating, like for a metadata API that would work across all registries, so that we could see, you know, how many polls probably over a period of time. Like, what's the poll count? What's the, whether it's stars or not, I don't know. But when should something be deleted, right? Like a bunch of us have registries that customers don't know how to delete stuff. Not because there's not a delete API, because we've all implemented delete APIs, but they don't know how to differentiate the image they pushed that they never got deployed versus the image that actually was deployed and is still running. So, if registries can store the standard API that says, hey, by the way, I checked and this image is still running today. And there's a lifecycle policy that says, hey, I'd like to delete anything that's not currently running, or 6 months after it's not been running. Well, you need some metadata to store that. So that's some other metadata APIs that I'd love to see standardized on registries too.
Yeah, see, signatures are maybe the YouTube comment of the container images. You can try watching a YouTube comment, but it's not a very compelling. And the same is true for, there are a lot of things which we would like to attach to an image in a registry. And again, I want artifacts.
I like Haley's comment, never read the comments of a container image. So here's some metadata. I can't like her comment. It's like I can't just, there's nothing there that I can say like thumbs up and I really like your comment there. Anyway, so Brecken, I'm assuming you're teasing out the question, because I assume you have an opinion of why ICR isn't just a storage API. You tease the question, what's your thought?
I think it's difficult to say. I wasn't around when the team first set up. There was 4 people in the office when offices were a thing that set up the registry. I believe our intention is just for things to work, popular clients for working with containers to just work. I'm happiest when our customers don't know I exist. Most of them don't. You get a Kubernetes cluster and there's this Docker push command with this funny domain that kind of works, and then then your container starts. So client support is my largest focus, but yeah, to that end, I think the important thing is settling on a common means of putting things which are not images in, which are related to images in the registry.
Yeah, I think what I've seen is the end-to-end users who are pulling, pushing images are not the people who sort of interact with registry, or they're not the people who care about registry and how it works. It's the people who admin the registry, who interact with it and have, they want to be able to delete unused objects. They want to be able to say like, oh, how much storage is this namespace actually taking up? Those are the people who I think interact with the registry in a way that's beyond the power company. So I think at the same time we're invisible to clients. We should be a pretty good experience for admins who are actually running these instances.
Agree. So we're magicians, but I think we all want to pull the bunny out of that hat the same way, so customers know what they're getting. No offense to Bunny. So I think, like, just because we had 2 specific items on the plan, I think my view is never to block anybody, anything. So it's not, hey, how do we block BuildX? I don't remember how exactly written, but it was because, and this is why it was interesting after the fact when I realized that ACR wound up supporting manifest, which indexes with blobs, because I didn't realize that's what happened. It was more of, hey, we enabled our customer. That was the goal. Is how can we help BuildX and the other 2 new types have a path forward, and say, look, if you do this, look what support you'll get. Either what support you'll get today, or look what support the registry operators have agreed that they want to support, but just we need a definition of what that support would be. Because the circle, like the cart, horse, chicken, egg problem that we get caught in is, well, I won't implement that because not all registries support it. It's like, well, okay, I totally get that. But where do you start? So, we have to start somewhere. And if we can start implementing some APIs that maybe have a specific use case, like that's what we're trying to do with the signing. Helm has been super interesting, but nobody's blocked because registries don't support Helm, right? This has been kind of the debate. So it has taken longer to get adoption for something that pretty much mostly just existed. We just had to relax the media types. We totally recognize that the reference types using the new artifact manifest will take time for the registries to opt into that behavior. I guess that's what I never finished. The difficulty of reference types isn't parsing a JSON document. Like, that's the easy part. The fact that it is a new JSON document, new manifest, lets us opt in and know what we're promising our customers. The hard part is the lifecycle management. How do I not GC this thing when somebody does want to delete, their image? Should the reference types go with it? Do they get zombied behind? So for us, that's the challenge we've seen, is the putting it on a new manifest helped us have a clear path of offering a customer support, what we're promising. We're adding it to one of the existing ones and kind of ignoring the property, like what exactly happens? What's the expectation from a customer? Sure, I could push it, but if it's gone in 3 days, is that really the expectation that a customer wants? I would when I search Netflix or I search for a movie, I want to see that, oh, I typed the movie right, you just don't have it in stock. As opposed to I type it in, they don't know what it is because they don't have it in stock. That to me is a bad experience. So the deterministic behavior is much better, in my personal opinion, than it looked like it worked. It might work, and then 3 days later, I find great. I'm now deploying it in production, and the thing was deleted because the registry didn't know about the reference type. As an example, so manifest relatively easier to implement than it is to do the lifecycle management, and there's no cheap answer. I think people saw this when they added index support, because index support wasn't on every registry for a while. We had to go and add behavior for that. So anyway, we're kind of coming towards the end. I want to still always give a chance for others. We've been working pretty hard to try to get the artifact manifest stuff going under OCI. OCI hasn't really incubated anything new since its inception. It's pretty much been adopting things that were already out. Like, it's basically been documented in the Docker API. We're trying to figure out if, because how do we, because we do want to ship this solution, which we hope other registry operators will support, because we think it's a very generic API and the signatures is the compelling thing. And whether it's an ODVT signature, I've heard that the cosign folks would also support this because they see the same example. They're just challenged with registries don't yet support it. We hope that we'll have some adoption. We're trying to figure out if we're gonna, we'll do it in parallel. So we'll have it we're going to continue to propose this under OCI, but we're probably going to put the artifact stuff somewhere in a shared location so that others can contribute and work there. And we'll incubate in that location. And I really would love your feedback. If we believe in the dumb storage bucket that we can deliver consistent behavior and just be magicians and users are happy, then all of your feedback is really important to say, like, hey, this would be more challenging, or if you named it this way, that would be really helpful. Today, all that feedback has been on that PR 29 under artifacts. I'll let folks know where we wind up putting that if we do have to move it. But that's our goal, is to really expand all of those security, scalability, reliability, pixel painting experiences that we have our registries, and to enable clients to have a consistent behavior across all registries. That really is just purely the goal that we're trying to enable, because as the whole platform goes up, everybody wins. And then all the other stuff that we compete on above that, sure, let them go party, but at least we can get these artifacts and registries in a secure way. Yeah, Brad, I like I don't know exactly the whole experience of you call it simple signing, simple, I forget. I'm getting too many
Call
simple
it simple signing, yeah.
My understanding, and this is be perfect feedback, is you should be able to just push a simple signing signature to the registry as a ref type. And I know people are super busy. I'll repaste the links to how you can test this today, because we have a fork of distribution that supports reference types, and we have the NORA's library that you can push reference types. It'd be interesting to see, what if you package up a simple signature, simple signing signature. I don't know what you call it. Too many S's. And what if anything would need to change? Because
I think I just want to go and look at on the pushing side and the pulling side, what requests get made and does it work? And that's, if it does, then that's one vote up towards the artifact spec being correct, right?
that'd be super cool. Because part of this is it's not just the manifest that pushes it, you got to get it out. So there's this refers API that says you don't need to know about a signature. Give me all the reference types for the net monitor image. You can also say, give me all of the IBM simple signing artifact types that are reference types to the net monitor image, and you will get those back. So that's it. I'll post that video link too. Also, there's that video link that I made that walked through all of this. And then you can do this today with a fork of distribution in ORAS. Like we already did those reference implementations. So yeah, we would love, that's why we're keeping them separate, honestly. Like we've just originally, the ref types were under Notary, and we realized that there's more generic use. And I didn't want to put ref types under the Notary project because I didn't want to preclude somebody that's trying to do something that might be competitive with Notary to also use ref types. Like, here's ref types, here's Notary can use it, cosign, IBM simple signing, SPDX SBOM, Cyclone DX SBOMs. Some of those compete, some of those don't. But if they can all use ref types and we as registry operators feel comfortable implementing them, then that's a huge win. I'm just reading David's comment. So, David, I'm not sure if you're comfortable talking in English. I want to give you a chance to talk.
Yeah, perfect. Do you all hear me?
Yeah, and I do have a couple of minutes to go over.
Yeah, if you want to say something more, like please do it. Like we can also do it at another time. It's not like that at all. But I just wanted to give you information because we would like to start the work. If you guys are interested in fuzzing, but the short story is we have been doing a lot of fuzzing for various cloud native projects, Fluentbit, Vitess. We're also starting to work in Kubernetes soon. Bunch about like Linkerd and stuff like that. And we would like to also we do this work in collaboration with Linux Foundation. And we would also, Chris from the Linux Foundation has now asked us to engage with distribution. So we do some collaboration with also the OSS Fuzz people, which is like a project run by Google where they run all the fuzzes on a big cluster. And we'll do it continuously, also in the CI if that's of interest. And if you're unfamiliar with fuzzing, it's a way to find vulnerabilities as well as like bugs in software by doing like sending pseudo-random input into the software and doing a lot of program analysis around it. So we would love to integrate that into distribution. Essentially, how it will work from our perspective is we will just do PRs and distribution and kind of like join in as a developer in a sense. So with as little kind of like friction on the project in a sense. So yeah, that's us. It's Adam who's also in the meeting who will be doing that work. And if there's any objections to that type of stuff, like let us know. We will be also in the Slack, so we can also write there. I don't want to take any more of the time, but any questions, please ask.
Yeah, just super quickly. The only thing that is sort of like pricking the hairs up on the back of my neck is that the tests and distribution they need a refresh in
Right.
various ways. But that's the only thing I think of is a lot of the tests still use Schema 1 images as exemplar data, and it's something we should move away from as the default case.
Okay. So that's perfectly fine. We have a good amount of time to do this. It's not something that's like super stressed from our side. Just by the end of the year, it would be nice if we could have a good fuzzing suite for distribution. And if there aren't good tests or anything like that, then we will just work from there. Essentially, that's fine for us. Just comment on the PRs with what's like wrong about them in a sense. Yeah.
I mean, I think obviously we have a key set of people here on this, but there's a larger set. I think if you want to open an issue on distribution, and we can bring focus to it, and if we haven't been having these calls as regular, we certainly can, as topics come up. But I think if you open an issue there, then other distribution maintainers can comment and get
That's
visibility.
good. Can we open a PR instead, just because we have done the initial integration with OSS first? So we already have some stuff, and just comment there. That's fine. Sounds good. Cheers. Thanks for.
No, thank you. So for next up, that was cool. I know Chris has been doing this, initiating this in a couple of projects to try to get the more secure. I'll post some links. So just quickly for me, I'm actually going to be out the next 2 weeks. I'm doing this weird adventure, taking a wooden ship up to Alaska from Seattle. It's I have to try and decide how much information I'll post on it, just because I don't want to randomize people with weird things, but I will be completely off the grid, and it just came up this weekend as it's another story. But so I'll be out. So I am trying to rush to get a couple of number of things done this week before I literally just disappear. Great to get your feedback, and hopefully we can keep this stuff moving forward. Thanks, folks.